The stars burned cold above the battlefield. Ships drifted in silence, many destroyed, many dying. The war between the alien swarm and the Galactic Coalition had lasted for decades, and now it was almost over. The alien queen Kaelira stood inside her command chamber, her breath slow and heavy. Her hive was broken. The swarm, once mighty and feared, was now scattered across space. Kaelira watched through a cracked glass panel as debris floated past. The Coalition's fleet was moving closer. Their largest ship, the Horizon Flame, glowed with deadly power. Its commander, Luke Barrett, was known for never showing mercy. He had already destroyed 3 of her colonies in the past month. Her advisors tried to speak, but she raised a hand. Silence fell. She knew what they feared. They were close to total defeat. She had led her kind through countless battles, but this war had drained them. Her warriors were tired. Her ships were weak. The end was near, but Kaelira had one last hope. Long ago, during a war much darker than this, she had fought beside humans. Not all humans had hated her kind. Some had fought with honor, some had called her a friend. She had kept their names hidden in her mind, hoping never to use them again. But now, the time had come. She moved to the center of the room and gave the order.
Activate the signal.
Her voice was calm, but her heart was not. A small drone flew forward and lit up. A message, ancient and coded, was sent across the stars. On Earth, far from the war, the message reached an old house in the hills of Arizona. Grace Monroe was sitting on her porch, looking at the sky. She had been a captain once, a fighter, a leader. Now she lived alone, with silence as her only company. When the alert came, she knew what it was. The signal was old, but she remembered it well. Ethan Cole was fixing a broken satellite dish in his backyard when his device beeped. He climbed down, confused at first, then he saw the code. His eyes went wide. It was her, the Queen. He grabbed his bag and called Grace. At first, Grace refused to listen. She had left that life behind. But Ethan reminded her of the promise they had made, that if the Queen ever called, they would answer. They had fought together once, and they had won. Maybe they could do it again. They needed a team, Mason read. A scout pilot living in a quiet town in Montana. Zoe Hart, a former combat medic working in a small clinic. Riley Brooks, a sniper now teaching kids how to shoot arrows in a camp. Carter Blake, a quiet engineer who spent his days building drones in a garage. One by one, they came. While some were quick to agree, some needed more time, but in the end, they all came back. The Valiant Star, their old ship, had been kept in a hidden hangar under the desert. It was rusty, but it still worked. Carter spent days fixing its systems. Mason tested its engines. Grace walked its halls in silence, remembering the past. They knew the risks. The Coalition would see them as traitors. The swarm was hated across the galaxy, but they also knew Kaelira. She had saved them once. They owed her. As the ship rose from the desert floor and entered the sky, Grace looked at her team. They were older now, but the fire in their eyes was the same. They were ready. Kaelira stood alone in her chamber, watching the stars. The signal had been sent. Now she could only wait. If the humans answered, there was still a chance. If not, her kind would vanish from the galaxy forever. Far away, in the silence of space, the Valiant Star flew toward the Queen. The old alliance was not dead, not yet. The Valiant Star moved quietly through space. Its engines hummed with steady power. Inside, the crew sat around a long table in the meeting room. Grace Monroe stood at the head, her arms crossed, eyes focused. Ethan Cole brought up a star map on the wall. A red light blinked in the far corner of the map. That was Kaelira's last known location. Deep in the asteroid fields near the edge of the Forgotten Sector, not many ships dared to go there. It was a place of silence and shadows. Mason leaned back in his seat. He had questions. Why now? Why had the Queen waited so long to reach out? Grace understood his doubt, but she trusted Kaelira. She had seen the Queen's honor with her own eyes. She told them what she believed. Kaelira would not call unless she had no choice. Zoe checked the medbay, making sure it was stocked and ready. She was quiet, but her hands were steady. Riley cleaned his rifles in the armory. He did not say much, but everyone knew he would be ready when the time came. Carter stayed in the engine room, tuning the power core. He spoke through the comms when he needed to. As they neared the asteroid field, the ship slowed. Large rocks floated like frozen giants in the dark. Mason took control, guiding the ship with care. One wrong move could mean disaster. But he had done this before. The valiant star slipped through the maze of stone and shadow. At the center of the field, they found her. The alien queen's base was built inside a hollow moon. It looked damaged, but still alive. Small lights flickered on its surface. A signal came through. It was her voice. Calm, low, and strange to human ears, but clear. Grace responded. Her voice was steady. Permission to dock was granted. The valiant star moved into a hangar inside the moon. The crew stepped out slowly. Swarm drones watched them from the walls. Their eyes glowed faint blue. None of them moved. Kaelira entered the hangar. She was taller than any human, her skin a pale silver, her eyes bright green, only a simple cloth over her chest and shoulders. Time had left marks on her body. Her steps were slow but strong. Grace stepped forward. The two looked at each other. They had once fought side by side. No words were spoken at first. Then Kaelira nodded. Shh. Grace nodded back. Peace. Kaelira led them to the command chamber. Along the way, the crew saw broken machines, damaged halls, and wounded swarm workers. This was not the army they remembered. It was smaller, weaker, and tired. In the chamber, Kaelira showed them a recording. It was from a spy drone. The Galactic Coalition was hiding something, a secret lab deep in the Shadow Nebula. There they had created a new kind of soldier, half machine, half alien. The project had been shut down years ago, or so the public was told. Kaelira believed the lab still operated. She had proof. The last battle where her swarm lost a full fleet had strange signs. Her ships were attacked by weapons to advance, and soldiers that did not bleed. Ethan studied the footage, agreed it looked wrong. Carter asked for more data. Kaelira gave them all she had. The Queen asked for help, not for her own sake, but for the galaxy. If the Coalition was building these hybrid soldiers, they would soon turn on everyone, even humans. Grace looked at her team. They had all seen the signs. Rumors of ships vanishing, people missing, battles that made no sense. Maybe Kaelira was right. They needed to see the truth for themselves. A mission to the Shadow Nebula, it would be dangerous. They had no support, no backup. If they were caught, they would be marked as enemies. But none of them turned away. They had fought for peace before. They would do it again, together. The meeting ended. The crew returned to the ship. As they prepared to leave, Kaelira stood at the hangar doors. Her voice reached them one more time. Thank you. If we fail, the stars will burn alone. The valiant star took off into the dark, heading toward the nebula. Behind them, Kaelira watched, her last hope now flying away. The Shadow Nebula was not marked on most maps. It was a place hidden in myths, surrounded by strong winds of dark energy and shifting stars. The valiant star moved slowly through the fog, its lights barely reaching past the windows. Grace sat in the pilot chair with Mason beside her, eyes scanning every signal on the screen. No one spoke much. The nebula made them feel uneasy. Even the ship's systems gave wrong readings. One moment the sensors showed calm space, the next they screamed warnings. Carter worked hard to adjust the scanners. He tried to keep the system stable, but even he could not fully trust what they saw. Ethan looked at the maps again and again. The location Kaelira gave them was close, but there were no signs of a base. No lights, no signals, nothing. Riley stayed near the front guns, ready in case something appeared. Zoe walked the halls, checking on everyone, making sure they stayed sharp. After hours of silence, Mason spotted something, a shape in the dark, large and still. The ship moved closer. Slowly, the shape came into view. It was a station, hidden between thick clouds of space dust and floating rocks. It was dark, but not dead. Grace gave the order to hold position. They sent a drone to scan the outside. The drone found a hidden port on the lower side. Carter hacked the access code. The gate opened. There was power inside. They suited up and entered the station. The air was thin but clean. Lights flickered on, weak but working. The halls were cold and empty. The team moved in pairs. Grace and Ethan went left. Carter and Zoe went right. Mason and Riley watched the entrance. Inside, the walls had strange marks, symbols mixed with human writing. They found broken machines, strange containers, and empty beds. Some rooms looked like labs, others looked like cells, but no one was there. Then Carter found a file locked in a terminal. He broke through the firewall and opened the logs. The lab had once been shut down, but a secret team brought it back. The project was called Phase 9. It was meant to create new fighters for the Coalition, strong, fast, and without fear. The logs spoke of tests. Many failed. Some subjects went mad, some turned on their makers, but some were called stable. These soldiers were sent into real battles. That was why Kaelira's forces had fallen. These were not normal enemies. They were made to destroy anything in their way. Zoe found a room filled with glass tanks. Inside them were empty shells, bodies with no minds. Part alien, part machine. One tank still had a body inside. It moved when the lights hit it. Its eyes opened, bright yellow. The team pulled back. The lights across the station came on at once. A voice spoke through the speakers. Cold, slow, and calm. It welcomed them. It said they were not enemies. It said they were expected. The door behind them locked. The voice said the project still lived. The station had many eyes. It had been watching them since they entered. The soldiers were ready, and the time to reveal them had come. Mason called out over the comms. Shapes were moving outside, ships with no markings, fast and silent. Riley took position and powered up the weapons. Grace told everyone to fall back to the ship. As they ran, drones dropped from the ceiling. They were thin and sharp, moving with strange speed. Riley shot 2 before they touched the ground. Zoe pushed one away with her shield. Carter opened the last door just in time. They made it to the Valiant Star. Engines came to life. Mason flew them out fast through the dark and dust. The enemy ships followed. Grace gave the order to split power between shields and speed. The chase was long and wild, but the Valiant Star escaped. Once safe, the crew sat in silence. They had seen enough. The Coalition had gone too far. It was no longer just about Kaelira. It was about truth and what came next. They had to warn others. They had to stop the storm before it burned everything. Grace looked at the stars ahead. Their next move would change everything. The Valiant Star flew through space, lights dimmed and systems set to low. They needed to stay hidden. The enemy ships had followed them for hours, but turned back near the border of Coalition space. Grace stood in the center of the bridge, staring at the stars. No one spoke much. The things they had seen at the station were still in their minds. Soldiers made in secret. Half alive, half machine. Controlled by a voice without a face. Grace knew they had to act, had proof. Now they needed to make it matter. Kaelira waited for them. Her hollow moon base had grown darker. The swarm was smaller than before. Some of her ships had not returned. Yet when she saw the crew, her eyes showed hope. Grace shared the data. Carter connected the recordings and logs to the Queen's systems. Kaelira listened in silence. Then she turned to her advisors. They argued. Some did not trust humans. Some wanted to run. But Kaelira raised her hand. She had made her choice. She would stand and fight, but not alone. She would do what had never been done before. Unite her swarm and human fighters under one banner, side by side. Grace looked at her team. They all nodded. They would fight with her, for peace, for truth, for the galaxy. The plan was clear. They would strike the heart of the hidden program. A place called Core Station 9. It was where the hybrid soldiers were made and trained. It was where the voice lived. To reach it, they needed help. Kaelira sent messages across her old swarm channels. Many did not answer. Some were lost, but a few did. Small groups of drones and fighters came. Not strong, but loyal. The Queen told them the truth. They listened. Grace contacted old human allies. Few answered. Some had doubts, but others had seen strange signs. Ships vanishing, strange orders, shadows behind missions. One of them was a man named Aaron Knox. He had once been a fleet leader. Now he lived in hiding. He agreed to send 3 ships, small, fast, and full of fighters. The united group met near a dead moon. They had little time. Carter worked with swarm engineers to share power systems. Zoe trained new medics. Mason helped drone pilots learn fast moves. Riley shared his skills with swarm snipers. Kaelira and Grace stood together. One tall and alien, the other strong and human. They were different, but their goal was the same. Stop the creation of soulless soldiers. End the secret war. And they moved toward Core Station 9. It was hidden in a metal cloud near a red dwarf star. The station was large, built like a tower floating in space. Ships guarded it, silent and cold. The plan was simple. Kaelira's swarm would attack from the front, loud and clear. A distraction. The Valiant Star, with a team of humans and swarm fighters, would enter through a secret path found in the station files. The battle started with fire and noise. Swarm ships crashed into enemy lines. Lights flashed. Drones spun and struck. Coalition ships answered with sharp beams and fast rockets. In the chaos, the Valiant Star slipped in. Carter guided them through narrow paths. One wrong turn, and they would be seen. But they made it. Inside, they moved fast. Grace led the team. Ethan followed with the data pack. Zoe and Riley covered the sides. Swarm fighters stayed close, guarding every move. They reached the control room. The voice returned. Calm, cold, and proud. It said they could not stop progress. That fear made people strong, that the galaxy needed control. Grace ignored the words. She gave the order. Ethan plugged in the data. Carter hacked the systems. Lights blinked. Warnings flashed. The truth, the files, the records of every test, every lie, every victim, all went live. The message was sent, across the stars. To every ship, every station, every leader. Outside, the battle changed. Some coalition ships stopped. Some turned away.
Yes.
Others kept fighting, but many now knew the truth. The united force pulled back. Core Station 9 burned behind them, not fully destroyed, but broken. The voice went silent. The Valiant Star returned to Kaelira's base. The crew was tired, but alive. The Queen greeted them with respect. The bond between them was stronger now. They had done what many thought was impossible. They had stood together and won a piece of the war. But the fight was not over. More battles would come. More lives would fall. Grace looked ahead, knowing the final storm was near. The news spread fast. Across space stations and command ships, people watched the leaked files from Core Station 9. Videos, records, and voice messages told the truth. The Coalition had broken its own laws. It had created monsters in secret. The leaders had lied. Protests rose across human space. Pilots refused orders. Ships stopped moving. Commanders demanded answers. Some loyal to the old power still tried to hold control, but the people no longer trusted them. On the horizon flame, Commander Luke Barrett stood in silence. He had served the Coalition all his life. He had believed in peace, in law, in duty. But the files from Core Station 9 shook him. He read the reports again and again. He saw the faces of those tested, heard the cries of the lost. He made his choice. Luke contacted Grace Monroe. His voice was strong but different. He wanted to meet. Not to fight, but to talk. Grace agreed. The Valiant Star met the horizon flame in the safe zone near a dead star. Grace, Ethan, and Kaelira entered the horizon flame. There was silence as humans and swarm drones walked side by side. Luke waited in the meeting hall. He stood when they entered. He looked at Kaelira first. There was no fear in his eyes, only sorrow. He apologized, not for the war, but for not seeing the truth sooner. Kaelira accepted his words. Grace watched closely. She saw no lie in him. They talked for hours about the past, the mistakes, and what needed to be done. Luke offered his ship, his crew, and his name. He would speak to the public, would stand with them. The Horizon Flame joined the Alliance. Other ships followed, some slow, some fast. A wave began to grow. Human swarm and others from across the stars joined together. They called themselves the United Force. The old coalition tried to fight back. No, they sent orders. They spread fear, but it did not work. Their lies had no power now. The truth was stronger. Kaelira moved her base to a new station. Built in open space, it flew the flag of the United Force. Not a swarm symbol, not a human one, but a new mark. Stars joined by a single light. Zoe opened a new magnetic hall. She had trained both humans and swarm in healing. Riley worked with drone fighters, teaching them how to move unseen. Carter built better tech to protect all ships. Mason trained new pilots who had never flown before. Ethan wrote a report, simple and clear. He shared it across systems. He told the story of their mission, their team, and what they had found. He spoke of Kaelira not as a monster, but as a leader who had stood for peace when others had lost their way. Grace and Kaelira stood on the top deck of the new station. They looked out at the stars. So much had changed. So much still had to be done. Kaelira spoke first. She said peace was not won by a single battle. It had to be protected every day. Grace agreed. She had fought many wars, but this was the one she believed in most. Ships flew in and out of the station. Supplies, workers, families, and fighters. A new future was being built. But there were still dangers. Not all of the old leaders were gone. Some had vanished. Some were hiding. And no one knew if another project like Core Station 9 was waiting in the dark. Grace knew they had to stay ready. The valiant star was kept fueled and armed. Training never stopped. The crew stayed sharp. The bond between them had grown stronger than ever. Kaelira sent messages to other races asking for talks. Some answered with hope, some with fear, but they listened. The galaxy had changed. Two sides that once tried to destroy each other now stood as one. Not perfect, not easy, but real. Grace looked at Kaelira. The Queen looked back. No words were needed. They had made history. The stars ahead were bright. The past was behind them. Together they would face whatever came next.